Unshelling Medicine Podcast. Healthcare in the language we understand.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another session here at Unshelling Medicine. I have the very great pleasure of being here with Mr. Jeff Patterson. Welcome, Jeff. Jeff, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello, yes. I am a meditation and martial arts teacher. I've been studying for about 36 years. I've been running an academy here in Portland, Oregon now for about 30 years. And we've been fortunate enough to have about 26,000 students come through the academy, and through my online programs, quite a few thousand more. And I've been really blessed with being able to help people, show them how to use the meditative arts to build an evolving life practice around meditation and integrate it into their lives and see the many benefits from adopting a practice like this.
Beautiful. So, Jeff, what motivated you, or what was the turning point that you really honed in on meditation and, the benefits?
It's a bit of a funny story in that I started at a fairly young age and I wasn't interested in doing meditation or any of the meditative arts at all. I was very much into Western boxing, and I used to train at a boxing gym that was just a few blocks down the street here from my academy. And at a boxing gym, it's run a lot different than your traditional style fitness classes where you come in and there's a teacher and everybody kind of follows along with the teacher.
Right.
In a boxing gym, usually there might be anywhere from 4 to 5 different coaches, and each one of these coaches might have 4 or 5 fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one gym that I was at, there was one coach who had created national and world champion level fighters, and I really wanted to get to spend some time with him. He was an amazing coach. I had a lot of respect for him. And so I'd always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there and kind of follow him around and let him know that I wanted to spend some time with him. And after about 4 or 5 months of following him around, he finally started showing me some stuff and helping me out. And it was only about maybe 2 or 3 weeks of getting to work with him when he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And, I started doing it, and it's changed my life in so many ways. And through the years, I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's what's made me so passionate about, working on my last couple books and creating our online program and really kind of putting my heart into it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So when we're talking about Tai Chi on its own, I'm glad you mentioned, it's not for all people in the park, because that's mostly, the demographic of people that in the Western world, we see practicing Tai Chi, or, Tai Chi is very popular among that specific demographic. In a layman's term, can you tell our audience, the correlation between Tai Chi and meditation? Because there's a big relationship there that I think most people don't understand.
Yeah, so when I talk about the meditative arts, I'm referring to movement practices, sitting meditation, standing meditation, breath work, walking meditation, and Tai Chi is one form of movement meditation. Now, originally, Tai Chi was created as a martial art, and people used to study it a lot differently back then and trained it to learn how to use it in fighting. Since, the last 1,000 years or so, people have integrated the Qigong into Tai Chi. And now, if you were to pull up all of the Tai Chi schools in the US, I bet less than 5% of them even know how to use it as a martial art. Most people these days practice it as a meditative art and use it for the health benefits, because there's so many benefits in regards to your physical well-being, teaching stability, working on your flexibility and strength, working on your ability to control your mind and work with de-stressing techniques that help you find more focus and be more present in your everyday activities. With the meditative arts, whether you're doing a movement practice or a still meditation practice, the idea is learning how to integrate these things into everything we do so it starts to become a way of life and a little bit less of a hobby that we do once in a while. And that's where you really start to see the benefits of the meditative arts.
Right. So I'm happy you segued into this because when we think of meditation or the traditional way of meditating, the thought is sitting with your legs bowed or, straight, your hands in a certain position. And you just mentioned all these different ways that meditation can happen. Do you mind just delving a little bit into each aspect? I know you talked about Tai Chi and the movement, right? So the standing meditation, the walking meditation, all of that. Can you just maybe cover a little bit of what each looks like?
There's really hundreds of different styles of meditation, and I break it down more so into categories.
Okay.
So within the meditative arts, we have the physical side where athletes and combat athletes practice to improve their performance. Then there's the therapeutic side of the practice that helps us stay healthy and mobile and work around injury prevention. And then there's the medical side, which helps with healing through ailments and sicknesses. And then there is the philosophical side, which is more strategy and purpose. And then lastly, there's the spiritual side, which is more of the meditation and the de-stressing and learning how to find your center and your focus. And all meditation has elements of all of those areas. However, if you wanted to focus on any one of those paths, there's certain things that you would want to integrate into your practice. And I break down any meditation practice, no matter what path you follow, into kind of three pillars. We have ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices.
Okay.
Ritual practices are when you set a little bit of time aside every day, turn off your cell phone, turn off your audios, don't listen to anything, and just turn your focus inward. The meditative arts is often referred to as the internal arts, and there's a reason for that, in that it's meant to be able to increase our ability and our awareness to turn our focus inward and listen to our physical movements and inside the body, our mental thoughts and our emotions, and be able to be in tune with those. And so we start understanding when any one of those areas is maybe getting out of balance, and learn how to recognize that before it gains too much momentum in any one direction. And then we use our meditative practices and whatever we have in our toolbox to help come back to that focus. One of the most common things I've heard people say through the years is, I tried meditation, but I couldn't quiet my mind. It just didn't work for me. And, somewhere along the way, people got this misconception that in order to meditate, that you have to be in this state of nirvana and no thoughts bother you in order for it to be successful. And
Right.
it's so not the case. Meditation is a tool. And if you sit and meditate, or if you're doing a movement practice and say you're doing 20-minute session, if you get distracted 50 times during that session, and every time you get distracted, you recognize the distraction, you use your posture, your breath, your movement to help bring you back to center, you just got another repetition of being off center and coming back to center. And if you do that 50 times every day, and you do that every month, every year, every 10 years, you start to become so powerful and so good at, one, recognizing these imbalances, and two, having the tools and the focus to bring yourself back to center. Now, no matter what happens in the day, whether somebody says something to throw you off your game or you have a stressful day at work, you're able to use these tools and strategies to find your center and stay present and focused. And so it really is an amazing thing that you can do in every element or area of your life. And then so that would be what I call ritual practices. Then there's active practices, and these are things that you can do when you're standing in line at the grocery store, or walking down the street, or even sitting in your car at a red light. And they can be done in as little as 60 seconds or 2 or 3 minutes. And the idea is we use these to help us keep our awareness and our focus and stay in that kind of meditation mindset all day, every day, being more present and more aware of what's going on. And by integrating these into our life, now it really starts to become a lifestyle, and you get to the point where you start regulating without regulating. And this is the idea of the practice. And now it just starts to become a way of life. And then lastly, we have our philosophical practices, and these can be both ritual based or active based. And as we build an evolving practice with the meditative arts and use these different strategies, it really starts to kind of blossom into a practice that fits our lifestyle and our needs.
Mhm. That's so beautifully stated. And, you mentioned something about the misconception that, in order to meditate properly, you need to be in the state of nirvana. And if you have the slightest bit of distraction or intrusive thoughts, then, you're not great at it, right? And the other misconception that, even I had to work through myself is that it's supposed to be an immediate gratification type of thing. You're supposed to just be good at it. No, it takes time. And, you need to be patient with yourself. Like you mentioned, recognizing those triggers and those distractions is key to really mastering and charting your own path with meditation. So, in a sense of religion, right? Because people could feel conflicted if they're Christian, Muslim, or Hindu. Is meditation, does it hinder religious practices, or it's just something to realign a person based, regardless of religion, and also can be used in conjunction with whatever religious practices?
I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of people get misled thinking that if they practice meditation, it goes against their religion. Meditation and the meditative arts, unless you're following a religious path that uses meditation,
Mhm.
have nothing to do with religious practices. And if anything, by being able to be more in tune with yourself and stay more connected and be more aware of your physical, mental, and emotional well-being, it'll only help you on whatever religious path you're on. It in no way will it have any conflict. And so you can use this practice in conjunction and with any religious path you want to follow, and really get a lot deeper into your path.
Right. Yeah. It helps centers. So let's talk about the benefits, right? What are the benefits, to list a few, medically, that you have witnessed or even experienced yourself with meditation or meditative practices?
Through the years, I've seen hundreds of stories of people that have reaped many benefits from the practice. A lot of people are drawn to the practice to help with their health and longevity and work on their strength and flexibility and their root and balance. A lot of older students will practice for fall prevention.
Right.
People who are dealing with stress and anxiety or panic attacks will come to the meditative arts to help deal with those. And I've seen that help numerous people. People that were having severe panic attacks will take on the meditation practice and integrate this into their life, and they totally go away and they never have them again. Other people will come to the practice because they're athletes or performers and they want to improve their focus and their performance. These days, there's many professional athletes out there that study the meditative arts to help improve their performance. And all of this kind of comes with having an understanding of what I call the 5 core principles or the 5 regulations of any meditation practice. And it doesn't matter if you're doing a sitting practice, if you're doing yoga, if you're doing Tai Chi, if you're doing Qigong, whatever your practice is, it starts with building a foundation in these 5 regulations. And they're regulating the body,
Right.
regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. And briefly, I'll kind of explain what all of these are. So when I talk about regulating the body, it's understanding your skeletal alignment, your muscular tension, how we move throughout the day. And an example would be, think about a time maybe where you're sitting down at your computer for 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward, you're feeling very lethargic, you're feeling depleted, maybe your neck's getting sore. And then think about another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world.
Right.
Now, we're in control of these two different energies 100% of the time, all day, every day. And so this is why this is the first idea, because in a fairly short amount of time, 2 or 3 months of focused effort, we can really change our physical, mental, and emotional state just by learning how to regulate the body in everything we do. And then the next regulation is regulating the breath. And this is a very deep topic. And in Qigong, they often refer to Qigong as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. And we use these strategies to control our outcomes. And an example of this would be, we kind of broadly categorize these breathing strategies into yin methods and yang methods because there are so many. And in a yin method breathing strategy would be, think about a time maybe when you listened to somebody when they were sleeping. If you notice, they naturally do a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming.
Right.
If we want to emulate this style of breathing in our meditations, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and this will help bring the energy inward, which is great for stress reduction, for anxiety, is it good for improving focus. There's many benefits of this. Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is more aggressive. An example of that would be if you ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to use that exhale, maybe put tension in the breath and make it audible. And this helps generate energy and expand it and make it go outward. And so when we start learning how to use the breath as a strategy, and in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the kan and li, or the water and fire, it teaches us how to keep balance of our physical, mental, and emotional well-being throughout the day. You know, we all go through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people are like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you notice these imbalances and say you start getting excited, you can use that yin breath to help bring you back down. And when you start feeling depleted, you can use the yang breath to help bring you back up. And now we can use this to find that center and to be a little bit more balanced throughout the day. The next regulation is regulating the mind. And we already touched on this a little bit when we talked about when you're meditating, you get off center and you use your focus to come back to center. Well, you know, we do this and get caught up on these negative paths all the time. You know, I read somewhere once that the average person has 85% of their thoughts that are negative, which is crazy to think about. And, you know, there's this story that I really love about these two older monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a big rainstorm. And they come up to this big, huge mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful lady, and she's standing there in a white dress, and she's crying. And the older monk, he yells across the puddle and says, "Ma'am, is everything okay? Can we do anything to help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, and if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so he rolls up his pant legs, and he walks across to the other side. He picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, and sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road, and finally the younger monk is just furious, and he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch ladies, but yet you did back there at the puddle." And he says, "You're still thinking about that lady? I left her back there at the puddle." And you know, how many times in our lives do we get 2 miles down the muddy road before one, we even realize we're off center, and two, we let it go. And so this idea of learning how to be aware of these imbalances and refocus and stay centered is a very important part of the practice. And then the next area of regulation is the idea of energy. And this is a topic that we could literally talk for hours on. But the basic idea of regulating the energy is once you have reached a competent level of regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, then we can use the energy to move it inward or to express it outward to get different outcomes with our meditation practice. And so it's a really valuable part of the practice. And as we get deeper into the meditative arts, we will use this a lot. And then the last regulation is regulating the spirit. And this is the idea of learning how to connect with that almost inner self, or being in that place where you say you're in the flow or you're in the moment, and nothing else gets in the way. A lot of monks and meditation practitioners will spend their whole life working to try to open their third eye. And so this is kind of the idea of these 5 regulations, and they're the foundation of any meditation practice. So no matter what path you decide to follow, we cultivate these 5 areas. And as you can see, they affect so many different areas in life. We get, just endless benefits by cultivating these different 5 regulations.
Right. I'm stuck on the monk story. No pun intended. That really resonated with me, and I'm hoping the listeners too, because oftentimes, and that 85% is astounding, but I'm not completely shocked, because oftentimes as humans, we have this incredible negative or toxic way of holding on to the negative, which, from trauma, which becomes so visceral that it actually affects the way we make decisions, it affects the way we interact with others, and it actually even it affects the way we react to situations, right? Being defensive at the mere assumption that somebody meant something else when it may not even be what it was, right? So the importance of understanding what these injuries are, and the importance of leaving things where they are and moving on, makes us spiritually and energetically lighter, to really live in our purpose. Would you agree with that?
For sure. And that kind of relates to the philosophical concept that I'm really passionate about. And it's the idea of yielding. And in fact, my latest book is called The Yielding Warrior. And I've broken yielding down into 3 different directions. We have physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. And physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. Now in athletics, it's easy to see how this can be beneficial, because you're not always going to be the toughest guy on the field or in the ring. And so you've got to learn how to deal with people that are a lot bigger and stronger than you sometimes. And so, we've been using this in the martial arts and in athletics for generations. Now, it's a lifelong practice to really master the skill. But the cool thing is by integrating the meditative arts into your life, from day one, we start to become more aware of these things inside of ourselves. And in order to be good at physical yielding, you need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium. Body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Well, when you start seeing those things more clearly inside yourself, you also start seeing them more clearly in other people, which is where it really starts to get interesting. And now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. So say, for example, we're having a conversation and I say something to you that unsettles you, and I pick up on it right from that first sign of imbalance. it's a lot easier at this point to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to slap me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, it's just teaching us to be more considerate and present in the moment, which is something that we should all do anyway. And two, it allows us to be strategic and guide conversations to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is very powerful in your personal relationships, in business, in sales, in negotiations. I mean, there's so many different directions that you can apply this idea. Then the last pillar of yielding, I call emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with your own interpersonal conflicts. So we think about oftentimes things will happen to us and we'll respond and we'll go down this path and we might get an hour, a day, week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding and being able to stay more present and in the moment, we can take a step back when these things happen and analyze the situation and approach it from a more present place and oftentimes make more educated decisions that save us a lot of heartache on the other side. You know, and I've been explaining this idea now for years. I've been running my academy for 30 years. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, that makes a lot of sense. You know, I do yielding all the time. And while I would agree, I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time.
Right.
It's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you they would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe that you will never have any clue of without having this kind of practice in your life. And that's one of the things that makes it so powerful.
I agree completely. So, you know, it goes not to segue into religion, but it goes. Somebody said something. It's resonated all these years with me. It's like I get so confused when people pray for patience, and then when they're given situations where they need to exercise the patience, they wonder why they're being afflicted with these occurrence. It's about practicing, you know, it's about being conscious of your interaction. And I think with the mental yielding, in using it in reverse, I want to see your thinking on this, because we as a society at some point this broke. I don't know when it broke, that, you know, even if we recognize the offense in our communication with another party, we don't seem to care anymore and we just keep going, right? Whether you're offended or not, as long as I get stuff off my chest, that's all that matters, right? With mental yielding, can you use it in reverse where if you say unconsciously or subconsciously react to something that somebody says in offense, can you use that to regulate yourself if that person doesn't seem to want to yield, for lack of a better way to put it?
Sure. You know, I would agree with that in the sense that, you know, there are some people that are very narrow focused and they're not very yielding, and it's difficult to connect with some people. However, there's a lot of good people out there that try to connect as well, you know. And the cool thing about yielding is that when you come up against somebody who has that, you know, that type A personality and they really are kind of aggressive and seem to not care about what you think, yielding allows you to pay attention to the subtle and not try to butt heads with them, but try to find a point to where you can connect and guide them to a mutual outcome that benefits both of you with the least amount of resistance. And so it can be used from either side. For people that are more in tune and can really listen, it can be very powerful that way. And, you know, one of my old teachers, he always used to say that with yielding, oftentimes you can make your enemies your friends, but without yielding, sometimes you make your friends your enemies.
Sure.
And it's so true in that it's just an invaluable skill that we all should learn.
Right. I agree. I like that lesson. So let's talk about today's world in personal health. More and more people are being diagnosed or are living with chronic conditions that energetically most can be realigned and recentering and refocusing on self. We live in such an industrial society that taking the time to meditate, realign oneself, recenter oneself is often thought of as a waste of time. What are your thoughts in implementing meditation and the art of movement, and meditation in all its forms, I should say, right, into today's modern medicine? Because modern medicine, I would say, I'm very proud, most practitioners and hospital systems are integrating a lot of these holistic practices. You are talking Reiki, we're talking even massages, lymphatic drainage, we're talking acupuncture, right, gua sha, right? So what is your take on implementing energetic work into modern medicine in helping people recover, heal, and live productive lives?
I think everything is kind of moving that direction. If you go back 30 years ago, there was not too many people that were open to the idea of the meditative arts and seeing the benefits. And now you'll see professional athletes that are using it. You'll see medical doctors that are recommending Tai Chi to help with their patients' rehab. You'll see, Chinese medicine has come so popular now, it's all over. And, Chinese medicine comes from Qigong theory. And so they're very closely connected. And I see people becoming more and more open to this, and the meditative arts help us find our optimal health.
Mm,
So a lot of times we can prevent the illness rather than having to get to the point where we're sick and out of balance and need to go to the hospital. And so I think as more and more people see the value in that, it's going to make some change. And you talk about not having time. I hear that all the time. People say, "Oh, I don't have time to meditate." And the Dalai Lama once said something that has always stuck with me, and that he said, everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour. And I love that saying, and that, we all need to have moment every day where we can just connect with who we are. In today's fast-paced society, we get so caught up with our cell phones and this advertisement and this distraction and this problem and that problem, that many times we're forced to put up these barriers and wear these masks to prevent us from really expressing what we truly feel, or putting these barriers up because we don't want to take in things that are coming at us. And we get so used to living this way that oftentimes we go to look at ourselves in the mirror and we're still wearing that mask. And meditative arts are one of those things that help us take those masks away
right.
and really help us stay connected to who we truly are, which is good for, our physical, mental, and emotional health in many ways.
Mhm. I agree. Preventative measures always is always going to have the upper hand, because at a point where we don't get to smell and see the smoke, and then we have a three-alarm fire to put out, it's best to practice safety. Have the smoke alarms in place, make sure that your outlets are not congested with flammable things, and don't light a candle and go to sleep. Right? So these are things that we practically do every day to prevent a disaster, but we often forget the walking disasters that we can become if we don't take care of the shell, which is this physical body that we're in. So I like the premise that you went with preventative care. Unfortunately, things like massage have been so bastardized that people still kind of like, I don't want to say shy away from it. People are still not comfortable with it. But, even with massage, the movements of the energy, movements of, your lymphatic fluids around your body, right, is very important for, drainage and general well-being, right? And it's the same with energy when it comes to meditating. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Reiki. Is that something that sometimes can be practiced in with, meditation? Or is that something that just basically lives on its own?
Yeah, Reiki, massage, acupuncture, tuina, all of those things, anything that has that energetic stimulation is great to do. I think all of those things can be used together and as part of a whole. Now it's coming more of as you start to integrate more of these things, it starts to become more of a lifestyle and just kind of the way you live rather than I do this little hobby and this little hobby. And that's where you really start to see the benefits of the practice. And one of the most common things that I see happening, and it's the most difficult thing for me being a teacher, is to train people to see the value in being consistent and staying with the practice. Because it's, if you plant a seed, it doesn't have fruit tomorrow. You got to let the roots sink down. You got to let it become a healthy tree, and you got to feed it. You got to water it. It takes time, and the meditative arts is very much like that, in that you've got to be consistent. And through this consistency, you develop discipline, integrity, and perseverance. And when these qualities start to come out because of your meditation practice, they affect everything you do in life. And now you start to develop those qualities in your relationships and your hobbies and your work and everything else you do. And so it works everywhere. And so as somebody new comes to the practice, I always like them to sit down for a moment and think about, why are you interested in meditation? Do you want to improve your health? Do you want to stay mobile longer so you can play with your grandkids and watch them grow up? Do you want to learn how to deal with a stress and anxiety disorder? Do you want to improve your performance and your focus or your creativity? Whatever that is for you, really spend some time and have some good solid whys that are drawing you to the practice. Because all of us, I don't care who you are, it's the day's going to come where your alarm's going to go off and you're like, just hit the snooze button. I'll meditate tomorrow. And if you have a strong why and a reason to get up and not hit that snooze button, now is where you start to develop the habit. And rather than it being a chore, you look at it as something you get to do because it's bringing all of these positive things into your life. And when you reach that moment and change those habits and have that inspiration to do the practice, now the sky's the limit. I mean, you can do almost anything with it. And then one last thing for those of you that are new, what I strongly recommend is that you need to find yourself a guide. I've been studying and teaching now for 36 years, and I'm still learning all the time. I've seen students come into the academy that have been training for 15 years, and they've been learning from watching this YouTube video or this video or reading this book and trying to figure it all out on their own. And they'll come in here and see somebody who's been in that guided practice for 12 months, right, and they'll get frustrated because they're so much deeper into the practice after 12 months than they are after 15 years. And life is short. Our time is valuable. It doesn't take that much to find somebody to help point you in the right direction and help you move along the practice. So really find yourself a mentor or a guide, a teacher that can help you. I always tell people to think about, imagine that you have never witnessed the game of basketball. You don't even know you're supposed to dribble the ball. You don't know the ball's supposed to go on the hoop. And I take you to a basketball court and I say, here's a ball, go play basketball. You're not going to have any clue what to do. Mm-hmm. But if I take you to that same basketball court and I give you a world-class coach and I say, go train with this person for 6 months, you could get pretty good in 6 months. So the meditative arts is like that. If you have somebody to help you in 6 months or a year, you can really accomplish a lot. And with consistency, and this is something I've seen hundreds of times over, For the students that come in here, I always tell them that if they can do a 20-minute ritual practice a day and integrate active practices into their life and be consistent with that for a year, they'll do this practice for the rest of their life. And that's with almost 98% certainty, because they'll see so many benefits from the practice that they would never want to stop. And so if you're going to want, or you have any desire even to take on this practice, find yourself a teacher, think about what your whys are, and make the commitment to yourself to be consistent for at least a year. And if you do that, I guarantee you it'll be one of the best things you've ever done, and you'll be forever grateful that you took on the practice.
Wow. Thank you for that. I am going to practice that myself, just being more consistent. I've been kind of a ritual practitioner now for a few months, and I can definitely see the difference in reaction and lack thereof. So you're right, and I am a continued learner. So I want to talk about your school, Jeff. So if any of our listeners are interested in learning and working with a coach or working with a teacher, somebody they can learn from, and they're interested in what you have to offer, what does that look like from enrollment? And, this program or this practice, I should say, it requires a lot of hand holding and guiding, right? So what does that guidance look like, given that if they may not be in the same geographical location as you are right now, but they want to work with you? Could you just let us know what your school and your teaching looks like?
Yes. So first, if you're kind of intrigued and this sounds interesting to you, one place you could start is you could go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, and I'll give you a free copy of my book. You just got to pay for shipping and handling. You can get an idea of what some of these concepts are, and it'll teach you some stuff on how to start integrating these practices into your life.
Right.
Also, at theyieldingwarrior.com, we have our online program that teaches you how to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts through movement practices, sitting practices, breath work, and how to integrate these things into everything you do. And you can try that out for a couple weeks and kind of see what's there. And remember, it's just you got to be consistent and make the commitment to do a little bit every day. There's also a teacher training program on the Yielding Warrior site that is great for anybody who maybe has a yoga studio or a martial arts academy or a life or a business coach that wants to integrate teaching of the meditative arts into their program. I know for a lot of martial arts academies, their general population is the younger crowd, and having a meditative arts program, you can tap into a whole new market that can really be a strong pillar in your business. Our meditation program here at the Academy generates about $35,000 to $40,000 a month just through the meditative arts. And so for a yoga studio or a martial arts academy, that's a nice pillar to add to your business. And for a life coach as well, there's a lot of business professionals out there that really need these meditative arts, and having the skill sets to deliver that to them is invaluable. And, even if this program doesn't look like the right fit for you, find yourself another coach. There's a million videos out there on YouTube, and if you try to do it yourself, you could spend the next 10, 15 years just getting lost in things, and some of them you don't even know what the quality of them are, and so really try to find somebody that you resonate with and have somebody help point you along the right path.
Right. Thank you for that. So you be the judge of whether a coach is right for you or not, just based on, again, going back to energy, how you feel, how they make you feel. Also, on this show notes, we will include Jeff's information, the link to his book, so you can grab your copy. It's free, pay your shipping and handling. And if you're interested, we are going to also include ways to reach him, for consultation or, to see how, you can possibly learn from him or work with him. So I thank you so much for being here, Jeff. It was a pleasure talking to you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Unshelling Medicine Podcast. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Altruistic Scribe on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We share additional tips, updates, and health-related content that you won't want to miss. Have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes? Reach out to us at altruisticscribeco.com. We're always eager to hear from our listeners and tackle the health topics that matter most to you. Until next time, stay healthy and take care.